Nothing like starting a stream with me chewing on something, right? Just leave the link here. I'm leaning in way too close to my computer. Swear I need to like fix my posture a bit. I've been getting kind of bad. Cause like also at my job, I'm also like leaning forward a lot. So I don't know, just bad. I need to fix that habit. I need to sit up, have better posture. It'll do me wonders, trust me. I just realized I mistitled the stream when I put it up. This is actually not the last stream of the year of 2021. It's the last podcast of 2021. Anyway, before I finish putting all the the announcement stuff, we are starting a little bit late, so I'll just do our introduction. Hello and welcome to the Stream Parson Podcast. And today it's a pretty relaxed day because it's just us hanging out on before Christmas, and it's the last podcast I'm gonna do for 2021. I know in the title I mistyped it as the last stream. This is actually not true at all. Actually, just give me a minute. I'll just fix it on YouTube here in a second. Maybe it'll fix itself, right? The last podcast of 2021. There you go. I had to fix the title there because I screwed that up. That's me being a dummy. As this is the last podcast, but I'll still do a game stream on Wednesday. And we have our last stream of the year, which will be the Christmas Eve service type of Bible reading stream. Doing like a Christmas Eve service kind of thing on Christmas Eve. That will be the last stream of the year. Now you're probably wondering, but wait a minute. There's still another week in 2021 before the new year. Well, I'm going to be away. That's what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to be away for the week. And I will be back. I won't be back for the first podcast of the year. I'll be back I'm back on Tuesday. I have a game lined up to start on the Wednesday. So what's that? January the 4th? I think the first is on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So the 5th. The 5th of January is when the 5th of January is where we'll be back after the new year starts, because basically there won't really be anything after Friday. I'll try and program to have Heroes of Might Magic Throwback Thursday videos, so I still have a little bit of content on the channel before the new year. So technically, we have like a December 30th Heroes of Might Magic video on Throwback Thursday. I'll have it up. I'll have it scheduled before I leave, and so I'm gonna be away for a while, and so there won't be a podcast till like the week after, right? So what would that be, like the 10th or something like that? The 10th of January. So the next podcast after this one won't be till like the 10th of January. That's how long we're gonna be away. And so, but I'll still start the book of Luke. Okay, so I guess I should go a step at a time, right? So, just so you know, after our Christmas Eve service on the 24th, I won't be streaming for like a week and a bit because I'm going to be away. I'll be back on the 5th of, or I'll be back to streaming on the 5th of January. Because while I may be away, I'm going to pre-program the Heroes of Might Magic video that will come up on the 30th, right? Because I still want to get through that playthrough, and I want to try and minimize the amount of weeks I need to upload, right? So I probably will get to filming that pretty soon. I'll probably film it like Wednesday or whatever, right? And then I'll film, basically I'll do 2 videos, right? Or I'll film 2 on Wednesday, upload one on this Thursday for our Christmas episode, right? And then we'll have one for New Year's Eve, basically. So, when I get back, though, the first day I'm going to start streaming again in the new year will be January the 5th, which is a Wednesday, which I haven't done in a while. Not seriously, right? But with that said, you know what that means, right? We're doing games on the channel again. Proper. I have a game ready. I'm going to have my buddy Shining Light. He was in the Fire Emblem 1 playthrough, which was all done video style. But now we're going to do another like kind of let's play, but it's going to be stream format, right? Now I know for some of you guys it kind of sucks that like I stream early, but you know, you can always just watch it on a playback, right? But basically the main reason why it's better to do, especially the like, no, you guys know me, right? Like the kind of games I play, I like to play like RPGs, which, you know, there's your hint. I'm playing another RPG on the channel. Big surprise, right? I'm playing an RPG on the channel. Hey, Ratwool, welcome to the stream. But big surprise, right? I'm gonna play another RPG. You know, that's how we're opening 2022, right? I'll be playing an RPG starting on January the 5th. And then I'll try and find another time to like play more than once a week. But when that video comes up, it'll probably be like, what, 2 o'clock Pacific time, which is what, like 5 Eastern, right? And so that will be the first video of the year, and that's going to be our new project that we're going to start. And I'm going to have my buddy Shining Light on the channel, and he'll be, you know, co-hosting as I play this newer game on the channel. Not really. It's like, it's almost a year old now. I just never got around to playing it. But we'll be playing a game on the channel on Wednesdays, starting 2 o'clock kind of thing. You know, that's kind of how we do things. This Wednesday, though, we'll still start at 3. We'll start later, and because I'm not playing an RPG this Wednesday, obviously. So I don't feel like I need as much time, right? But when I start playing this game, I'm not going to tell you what it is yet. You'll have to wait till I start playing it next year, right? To find out what it is. And so that's going to be on Wednesdays, and then we'll try and add another day or something. We'll see. Because once again, like, because I work full time, it'd be hard to, like, you know, find a lot of stream time. And then, of course, you know, the next thing that would be after we start that project on January the 5th, which is a Wednesday, the 7th of January, we'll be taking a totally different direction in how we do our Bible reading. Well, not totally different direction, but you know, I've read through like a whole bunch of Old Testament books during like 2021. So I think for 2022, I want to start with a New Testament book, and I'm going to start with the book of Luke. Of course, I'll be back to that more rigorous academic format of reading through the book of Luke. One, because it's, you could tell when I was doing like the book of Kings, I'm not as studied in the book of Kings as I was with like Genesis and Exodus, right? Like you were watching, if you watch those videos, you can tell I knew a lot more, right? When I was talking about like Genesis and Exodus, because I did my thesis on it. So I knew a lot more on those. The book of Luke will go back to that format, because the book of Luke and the book of Acts is also like another set of Bible books I'm way more familiar with and way more like studied on. So just be ready is what I'm telling you. When we start Bible reading streams again, it will be a lot more academic and lot more intellectually rigorous, which I know I've been kind of lazy on when I was doing like the Book of Kings, right? Because Book of Kings is not a book I'm not as familiar with, right? And so that is going to be the main kind of projects going on, and then of course we'll resume the podcast. Like, what day would that be? Like the 11th or whatever? I can't even get my days straight. What day would the Monday be? The Monday would be like the 9th. No, the 10th. The 10th, right? 10th of January, we'll go back to like these podcasts where I talk philosophy and stuff like that, right? Just going to type this thing down now because I didn't do it earlier. But anyway, so that's kind of the big plan that's going to be happening come 2022. I still gotta. Oh man, I did not know it takes so much work to be like, hey man, I just want help redesigning like some of the stuff on my YouTube, like to get an artist and all that. That I did not know. I thought it was gonna be way easier than it is right now. And to be fair, it's because I'm not paying Taki all that much. I'm like, okay, Taki, I just want these couple things. Here's $50, but for $50, you're not gonna get like a lot, right? Because he's gonna redesign a couple of things for me, quite a few things actually. So maybe I need to pay him more or something. But like, anyway, there's that, right? So we'll see how long it takes him to do what I need him to do, and then we're gonna change like the format and the setup of all my stream videos, because you can tell, like, you know, you've been with me for like the last year I've been around on this channel. You know that like all the format I did all myself, and it's really just like plaster image, plaster camera, you know, position and whatever, right? Like nothing really like spiffy on like the design aspect of like the channel, right? And for my videos and whatever. So, you know, I definitely want to do something. I should look a little bit more professional, right? It doesn't look that great. I can admit to that, but I mean, we'll see, like for game videos, it won't matter as much, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there, right? I definitely want to make the podcast look a lot cleaner, because once again, the podcast is still kind of in its, even though I'm like 12 episodes in, it's still like in a experimental phase. But come the new year, I'm gonna try to be a lot more formal about it. And of course, you know, that includes having guest speakers and stuff like that, which I haven't had the chance to do at all this year because everybody's busy, right? And to be fair, like, I know it's not like, because I'm the old guy, everyone else is in school, right? So it's kind of hard to like find time, especially like, you know, it's only more difficult as you go later throughout the, you know, when I started doing this. And it's like, oh yeah, you know, like, guys have to ramp up for exams and stuff, and that ain't easy, right? So you gotta put that in consideration. Just gonna finish posting this thing here, because I totally put off like putting my notification on my social media, because I'm busy talking to you, right? So, alrighty, and there. Oh, okay. So that's basically like, I know that was a lot of information to take in with all those announcements of how 2022 is going to go about, right? That's a lot of twa sounds you got to deal with. But I know that's a lot of information to take in, but you know, it's kind of important that we cover it now, because you know, since this is the last podcast of the year, and I'm obviously like gonna still bring up like some of the announcements during the Advent, you know, service, but once again, that one I'm gonna be a lot more like pastoral, and it's gonna be an Advent service as opposed to like, you know, our regular kind of videos. It's not even a Bible study format either, right? So that video, I would still give like a small announcement, but what the Friday video will be a lot more like, oh, just go through like the Advent, service and then kind of be done for the year, right? So I kind of want to make sure I kind of hammer it to you guys now that like, hey, 2022, this is what we're doing. What other JRPGs are you going to try out? Well, Raul, I've mentioned this a couple times already on like some of my other videos. You can always just check them out, but I'm gonna wait for some. The thing is like I want to get back into games on the channel as I said earlier, but I didn't have any like projects like that I really wanted in like the first part of the year, like the January part, right? Because as I've mentioned multiple times, even on Burke streams when that you watch as well, Triangle Strategies is a big one I really want to play. Of course, I'm hoping I don't run into any copyright claim problems when I play Triangle Strategies. I really hope I don't have that problem, because I ran into that problem with Bravely Default, and it really started screwing around with my streams. Maybe I can get help on a way to like get around that problem, and that would be great if that was possible. Because I really want to do Triangle Strategies, but that doesn't come out till like late March of next year, right? So that one is like for sure I'm going to play that one. Like, as I've rambled on many a times, Final Fantasy Tactics is one of the best games ever made, and now they're actually making like a spiritual successor. Like Square, is making a spiritual successor to Final Fantasy Tactics. I don't know if it'll ever no game could ever truly match up to Final Fantasy Tactics, honestly. But like, we'll see how Triangle Strategies is, and it looks like a really good game. I played the demo, loved it. So once they fix a lot of the little wonky bits of the game, I'm sure it's going to be a great game. I'm sure it's going to be great. And of course, there's all the memes about like, oh, in this game, unlike Fire Emblem Three Houses, your choices matter, right? But hey, that was already a thing in the 1990s. Hashtag Throwback Thursdays. Your choices mattered back then too. But Triangle Strategies is like for sure the game I'm going to play next year. So that would be like what, March till like summer or whatever, how long will it take me to play that, right? That one I'm really excited for. But I hope I don't run into problems, right? Because like that happened with Bravely Default too. I was looking forward to that. I started playing it, really got into it, and then like after like a week of streaming or like 2 weeks or something, it got wonky because like I started getting copyright claims, and then like it would actually screw around with the stream, right? And it's so stupid, right? Because it was like I'm not like taking your music from somewhere else. It's just the soundtrack of the game as I'm playing it, right? But Japanese games are like that, right? they just be like that. So Triangle Strategies for sure. That I'm gonna play when it comes out because I'm so looking forward to that. And then not so much a JRPG, but there's another game called The Songs of Conquest, and you'll eventually bump into the copyright trolls. I gotta figure out a way around that. Maybe I'll get some help. I believe one of the suggestions of getting around that is to change your pitch on OBS, which someone will have to tell me how to do that because I'm an idiot, right? So I don't know how to do that. So someone will have to tell me how to change my pitching on OBS so that the game's audio is warped. Which it kind of sucks when you're watching the video and you're like dealing with the warped sound effects and warped music tracks, but at the same time it saves me the trouble of copyright claims. So it's like you gotta pick your poison, right? It sucks that it has to be that way, but I mean it's the only way I can think of that is how to do it, right? How to get around it. I don't like it, but it's just how it has to be. And yeah, there'll always be some weird crap that comes up, right? I mean, it's the internet, Raul. Weird crap always comes charging into your face to cause you trouble all the time. So, but I'm hoping that Triangle Strategies will. I mean, I got like over 3 months to figure this out. So that's gonna be something we do. Another game I want to play on the channel because it looks interesting to me. It's called Songs of Conquest, and it's basically like a Heroes of Might Magic wannabe, but it's like a professionally made Heroes of Might Magic wannabe, right? And you guys I've been 40 weeks in like my Throwback Thursday videos. You guys know I love that game. So if there's gonna be like a, someone's attempt to recreate that Heroes of Might magic, I'm in on that, right? You got my interest, right? I think Songs of Conquest comes out like summertime, which is perfect, right? Because then I would play through Triangle Strategies and then jump into Songs of Conquest after, right? And then what we do after that, we'll see. And then I'm not sure if I'm going to continue a Throwback Thursday video because it depends on like my work schedule and stuff like that. Because once I finish the Heroes 2 Throwback Thursdays right now, I might have to use Thursdays for streaming as well, right? So I'll stream like Wednesday, Thursday for games. The 1 hour, bits with like podcasts, which yes, I with the podcast we'll have to go back and forth because sometimes they'll be live, so I can interact with the chat and we can talk philosophy. And then there will be times where they're like scripted and I upload it as a video. Because of course, like, if I have certain guests that I want to have on the, the podcast, they can't do like a live at like 4 o'clock. That doesn't work, right? So we would film it like an earlier time and then, I would just upload it like a video kind of thing, right? So the podcast will be kind of back and forth on that format. It's going to be weird. I mean, like, when I'm picturing it in my head, I know it's going to be weird. So we'll see how weird it actually is in reality. But basically, the original point I was getting at was that I'll probably drop doing, like, Thursday uploads and then do, like, use Thursdays for like game streams as well. To like definitely when I'm gonna play through like Triangle Strategies, for example, right? I'm gonna need more than 1 day a week to play that game on stream, right? You know dang well if it were up to me, I'd play that game every day, right? But for the sake of being, the dancing monkey on here, obviously I'm gonna play through the game blind on, on stream. But that means I want to have more time and more stream days to do that. And that would obviously be true as Song of Conquest as well when it comes out, because I'm pretty excited for that. And then whatever I do after that, we'll probably have like a short project and then take a little break toward the end of the year, right? And then rear up for 2023, God willing, right? So, that's kind of the game plan in that respect. So that's kind of how I kind of envision this channel going for a while, for the next year. You know what I wish OBS had? That Discord actually does have when I use like Discord and Discord chat is I wish OBS had a proper like noise suppression. That's the term I was thinking of. The noise suppression on Discord. I kind of wish OBS had that. So like when I have to take like a sip or I'm gonna snack right now kind of thing, right? It doesn't get all the extra background noise of like me chewing. I mean, I could just mute my mic every single time. But I mean, there's enough deafening silence as it is, right? I don't need to make it worse by like pausing it for like a whole 10 seconds as I chew on a chip or whatever, right? But yeah, we'll see if there's any other like mini projects I might pick up in between. Cause I don't know if I want to do like another like upload kind of thing. like upload just regular videos as well. We'll see. I mean, there's the possibility that the podcast may be like that in general, right? Because it is hard to find people to have philosophical discussions with at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right? that ain't easy. So, I mean, it's hard enough to get viewers at 4 o'clock in the afternoon because I mean, it depends on your time zones as well, right? Because for some of you guys, it's like later than that, obviously, but like 4 o'clock Pacific time is an awkward time. Like for me, it's an awkward time, right? Because like what I do today, like go to work and then come home, you know, get changed, wash my face, and then I'm on here, right? So it is a weird time, even for me, right? Anyway, as we approach the end of 2021, can you guys believe it? We finally made it, guys. We made it. I mean, we still gotta go through Christmas and the rest of the Christmas season, and I should be more intentional at watching more Christmas films because so far I've only watched one, and we're already at like, what day is it today? Like the 20th, right? Like today's the 20th, and I've only watched one Christmas film so far. I mean, it's one of the only ones you really need to watch, but I've only watched one Christmas film so far, and for me, a movie I always watch is the Muppets Christmas Carol with like Michael Caine as Scrooge. Love that movie. Watch it every year, basically. It's one of those movies that like I don't know, I just love it. I think it's because like I watched it as a kid, and it is the impression in my mind of like the Christmas Carol story, right? Because I mean, there's obviously a lot of different versions of the Christmas Carol, and so many different interpretations of it and whatever. But for me, that Muppets version really made its imprint in my mind, into my memory of like this is, the A Christmas Carol. Now, of course, I know there's gonna be somebody to say like, well, this version is better or whatever, or that version is better, and the do you want to have the internet war of like what version of like a Christmas Carol is the best version, right? I mean, is that even a fight worth picking? But like, basically, yeah, I don't know. I just like watching that movie, and of course, like another good version of it that is just fun to watch is like the Disney one as well, right? Because it's a nice kid-friendly one, nice family-friendly one. So watch it with like the nephews kind of thing, and so without it being too scary, right? Because of course, like, it's one of those funny things about a Christmas Carol, right? Because the whole point of the story is the whole point of a Christmas Carol is that as we get older, we don't get jaded to the joys of life, right? And I talked about this in a past stream and talked about like, okay, how we celebrate holidays in general. I know I talked about it like during the Halloween stream for sure. But basically the idea of a Christmas Carol, and I even read the book on the channel like last year. It's so weird to think that like, wow, it's already been a year. But like I read the book on camera last year. You can find that somewhere in the archives. I don't even know how to put it on a playlist or anything. But basically, the idea of a Christmas Carol is to remind older people not to get jaded, right? And so the funny thing, and of course that's why like you get those much more mature movies. But then of course it's always funny then. Oh, give me a second here. We got background noise, so I'm just gonna mute the mic for a second. Okay, background noise is gone. So, A Christmas Carol is all about, like, don't be jaded to the joys of life, right? You've always got to maintain that, like, wide-eyed wonder, right? Or else you become, a grumpy, angry person later in life, and that's basically what happened to Scrooge McDuck, right? And he's remind, wow, Scrooge McDuck, by Ebenezer Scrooge. I was thinking the Disney version, and of course it was Scrooge McDuck that played Ebenezer Scrooge, right? But anyway, with Ebenezer Scrooge, he gets so jaded to life, and that's why he's, bah humbug, right? Because he's lost that wide-eyed wonder in his life, and so it takes the ghost of Christmas past, Christmas present, and Christmas future to remind him the importance of living, right? And of course, there's that interesting irony, right? It takes the dead to remind to living how to live, right? And that's a motif that's in all kinds of folklore and whatever, right? Because the belief is once you die, that's it, right? You don't get the chance to keep living. Of course, there's the whole Christian idea that, like, well, the resurrection is meant to counteract that, right? Because the resurrection is the new life that keeps on going. But going back to the folklores of stuff like A Christmas Carol, for example, the irony of the dead telling Ebenezer Scrooge how to live, right, it's a very important lesson that, it doesn't matter what time and era you live in, right? It's an important lesson that we need to, live by, that, you have this life, and we have a pretty good life, especially, I mean, some places in the world, life is pretty terrible, but, like, a lot of places in the world, life is still pretty good for the most part, right? And so, with how good it is, don't squander it, right? Or else you'll become, an angry, bitter person like Ebenezer Scrooge. And so, with a story that deep, it's pretty hard to adapt that story into, like, a children's story, right? Because it's really not a children's story. But to be fair, most stories aren't, right? They were never really meant for children in general, right? Because to be fair, it's interesting. It's interesting to think of it like this: like, children don't need to be told, you know, how to live. Children need to be told how to control their passions, right? But the danger of controlling your passions is that you lose what you originally had, which was a, love for exploration in life, right? And it's interesting that life goes back and forth. It's a tug of war of those two things, right? You want to have that, you know, that wonder of exploration, the call to adventure, that kind of thing. But of course, reality requires you to control yourself, self control, discipline, right? And those two things are constantly pulling at each other. And that's something that, a lot of these stories, you know, they don't really talk about the wide eye wonder thing, right? Because once again, you don't have to really tell someone about that. People are naturally inclined for that sense of adventure, right? More often than not, we're always pushed toward the, like, a lot of stories push us toward, like, the discipline part, right? Which is important in society for you to be a functioning human being and whatever, right? So obviously that's important. But A Christmas Carol kind of, turns that back on its head, right? And says, hey, yes, being disciplined and orderly is obviously important, but don't lose, that childlike innocence, which is one of those things that, at least in my mind, and this is up for, like, theological debate, I'm sure, is one of the things that, like, when Jesus talks about, you know, unless you are like one of these little ones, referring to children, you cannot gain the kingdom of heaven. And so a lot of people wonder, what does Jesus exactly mean when he says, like, well, you got to be like a child? Well, you don't want to be stupid like a child, because that's not going to get you into heaven very well, right? So what does Jesus mean when he says like, well, you have to, be like a child in order to inherit the kingdom? And I think a lot. I think a lot of how it must refer to something like that wide-eye wonder, right? Because you, of course, this goes into like in the Christian world of like, well, if you become jaded, then you stop worshiping, right? Then you end up, your love of worship for God will die, and you can't have that, right? That's even worse, right? So maybe that's what Jesus is talking about, like that whole wide-eye wonder, child innocence thing, and that's what Jesus means when he talks about like, well, unless you are like, a child, you cannot inherit the kingdom. And so a Christmas Carol is just a secularized version of that idea. I gotta turn it back to dark mode because the glare of the screen was getting to me. Or it's just like because of course I'm obviously looking at the OBS thing because the camera's sitting right above the monitor that has my OBS on it, and then I can see myself, and when the lighting is off, it looks kind of funny, and I can see it, and so it's just like, oh, that bothers me, right? Oh, that was a bad time to try and talk. That's the real reason why your parents tell you not to talk with your mouth full. Give me a second here. Okay. I was gonna say, I'm gonna preempt. Oh. Drink. So I'm not choking on what I was gonna tell you that I'm eating. Okay. So to preemptively answer the question of what I'm eating right now, I had these like Oh, okay. I swear, guys, I'm not dying. So, to preemptively answer the question of what I'm eating, and just a little funny stories about it, like, poor man Michael's stories, I guess you could say. Is that, like, my dad will buy, like, these weird flavored chips. Because they're the ones that always go on sale, because they're they're the weird flavors, so, the average person doesn't go out and buy them. But, like, apparently, I got, like, a wasabi ranch from, like, a local company called Hard Bite. Now, you're probably thinking, like, what the hell? Like, wasabi ranch? It's actually not bad. And, it's one of those things that, like, my dad will try and do this to try and be, like, thrifty, buying, like, chips at a lower price, but they're all these weird flavors. So, like, in actuality, like, I'm the only one who really eats them. But that works. Like, what works is that, like, I'm the kind of guy who, like, I'll try anything, basically. And so, like, oh, wasabi ranch, okay, I'm gonna check it out. It might not be that terrible. Like, the only thing I dislike eating, which for some reason my parents love eating it, is, like, they call it bitter melon. And it's exactly what it sounds like, right? It's like this melon, this kind of, it's similar to, like, I think, like, what, it's similar to, like a squash, but unlike a squash, like, see, a squash is pretty easy to eat because it can easily absorb sugar. So you can make it taste way better than it is, right? Because squash has, like, a, like most melons, it's a pretty, like, it doesn't really taste like anything. So then you can, I mean, the beauty of melons is that since they don't really taste like anything, they just taste like water. So you can kind of make it taste with however you want to, with the right kind of sauces and whatever, right? And so, so I'm choking on a chip here. With any kind of sauces, right? So any kind of melon, you can make it taste like anything. Because since they have no real taste, you can't really have an opinion on how it is. Bitter melon, on the other hand, no amount of sauces will change the fact that it has like this it has like this spike. It feels spiky. That's the best way I can describe. It's kind of hard to describe like a taste to you, right? It's just, taste sense is like that, right? And the taste of bitter melon, it's very spiky, in the sense of like you eat it and you get this like you feel like something stabbing your tongue, right? And it's that's how bitter it is. It feels like it's stabbing your tongue, and you're just like I can't stand it, right? And so it's like one of those things I don't like, and I've tried it, so I know what it tastes like, right? And like I said, I'm willing to try it, but I don't like it. But my parents love it apparently. And my mom's always like, "Oh, Michael, you should eat more of this," and she's always eating bitter melon. We always have like a small bowl of it at dinner. Well, not always, but you get the idea, right? We'll have this small bowl of it. And I'm like, I'm not touching that. Because bitter melon is kind of nasty. Which, you might think that's weird coming from me. Like, here I am eating like wasabi ranch. Hard bite chips. Not a promotion, I swear. But, like, wasabi ranch, you think is like really out there. But I'm a guy who actually likes like ranch flavor. Like, well, ranch in general is actually pretty good. Speaking of ranch, though, and I don't know if you're watching this, to my coworker who didn't know what ranch is made of, but we were talking, we were talking about ranch, and the reason was because we were, at this job where we have to like pack people's meals and whatever, right? There was a guy who didn't want dairy, so no milk, no dairy products in his meals. And then we put some vegetables in a ranch. And then she asked, "Isn't ranch dairy?" It's like, "No. Do you not know what ranch is made of?" She goes, "Should I?" It's like, "Well, you should if you know you're gonna pack a ranch into a guy's meal that doesn't want dairy." And then she's like, "No, I don't know what it is." And I always make the joke. I always made the joke. I'm like, if you're a vegetarian and you eat ranch, you don't know what you're doing. Because ranch is basically made out of animal fat. Is basically what it is, right? I mean, it's obviously made of other stuff too. But one of its primary ingredients is that it's basically you're eating like cow fat is what. No, sorry, I think it's like sheep fat, not cow fat. It's sheep fat is what ranch basically is. So, I guess I like eating sheep fat because ranch is pretty good. That's one of the funny things at my job. Okay. No, I thought I heard something, but it doesn't pertain to me, so it doesn't matter. So, being a guy who actually cooks a fair amount himself, I know a lot about food and what goes into food and stuff. So when people ask, like, "Wait, that thing like a spice, or is this a spice, or is that a what?" Like, are those what kind like are those peanuts? Is that like or whatever? Like, for example, when we have to check allergies and stuff like that, we're like, okay, no peanuts, and then there's like a type of nut in there, like almonds or something. They'll be like, "Oh, is that a peanut?" It's like, no, uh, almonds are tree nuts. And then it's like, okay, what's the difference between a tree nut and a peanut and stuff like that? And it's like, and then of course, like this is part of me being a lot older than a lot of my coworkers. And secondly, it's like, I grew up having to do a lot of stuff myself, right? Because I grew up in a poorer family, so I had to cook a lot, and therefore I learned a lot. And so it's one of those funny things where like, okay, I have to tell you guys like this is what a difference between a peanut and a tree nut, and what is dairy, what isn't dairy, and whatever. It's just kind of funny. Give you that sense of like, yes, my life experience is showing. Because it's one of those things that I mean that's the only thing you can really pride about when you're older, right? Is that like, yeah, I have life experience, and that's why I know stuff, right? That's why I am in fact smarter than you. It's not because like of an IQ kind of thing. It's like no, simply life experience, and it's one of those things that like that's how important life experience is, right? Because once again, I talked about in the very first video of the my very first podcast, talk about like, okay, well, knowledge is easy enough to get, right? The internet exists. So you can basically know anything. But obviously, on how to live a good life, you need more than just knowledge itself, right? You have to be able to conduct yourself and carry yourself in life in a way that will, you know, maximize your benefits, right? And life experience will help you along with that. And that's one of those things where, like, once again, why, as a younger person, if you're, if you're a young adult, you want to go out there and go on your adventure and learn stuff, right? And it's okay to make mistakes here and there, and it's okay to even fail at things. But the idea is you're going to accumulate, hopefully, you accumulate the right life experiences so that you know how to conduct yourself as you go out on your own and live your life, right? Hmm. Anyway, I don't have much else to talk about because we've got like, okay, talk about Christmas, a Christmas Carol, talk about food stuff. I mean, the other thing too is that like, as we move toward the new year, and it's kind of one of those weird things where like New Year falls on a Saturday. I don't know. It's just because it messes up with the calendar that I have at like the bottom here. So it's like, oh yeah, like, but isn't that weird to think like in 2 Saturdays from now it'll be 2022. So like, hopefully the next year will be a good one, right? I mean, we say that about every year, but some let's just say if you made it to the next year, you had a good year, right? That's the way I like to look at it. If you make it to the next year, you had a good year. Because, we're not entitled to, you know, any time in life really, right? Because life is brief like that. And, you know, maybe this is just like this is the weird perspective of a guy who's probably crossed, you know, who's who's probably come close to death too many times. So maybe that's why I have this like weird outlook on life. But if you make it to the next year, you've had a good year, right? So as we approach the end of 2021, it's like, hey, like things have been pretty good. Like, of course, things can always be better, right? And that's a big difference that a lot of people need to also change their outlook on life. Because, like, things can always be better. But the big temptation is to kind of think utopian, which utopia is basically impossible, right? Definitely on this side of eternity, utopia is impossible. So never try and view, a utopian style of, don't use a utopian litmus, I guess I should say, of like saying, okay, was 2021 good because of like XYZ, goals being met. But the fact of the matter is like, hey, you're not dead. Hopefully you're not homeless, right? And having a bunch of terrible shit happen to you, right? As long as those things have been passed, you've had a good life, right? You've had a good year. And so like, you know, I look at, and it's one of those things that once again, like I've come close to death enough times. So like, okay, I'm grateful for all that I have, right? And that's something that I think is something important for all of us to reflect upon as we enter the new year, right? And I think going back to A Christmas Carol, I think that's another thing that's important is to another major theme of A Christmas Carol, I guess I should preface with that, is through the character of Tiny Tim, right? The boy who's sick and he dies in the future, supposedly, if nothing is done about his health. Of course, how the ending of the story changes is that Scrooge decides to kind of adopt him, and then he pays for all his medical stuff, and that's how he's able to find help and treatment, right? And that's kind of the heartwarming part of this, a big heartwarming part of the story, right? But through Tiny Tim, Tiny Tim, what makes him a great character is that he he's always willing to be optimistic, right? And he's always looking to like, okay, you know, how can I use my life to make someone else's better, right? That's his whole character, right? And that's why he's such a great character. And so that's something, that's another way of looking at like how to assess your years as you get older as well. Is not so much of all the good stuff that can happen in your own life, which is obviously important, but at the same time, you don't just get good stuff in life for only your benefit, right? The Christian worldview way of looking at it is, okay, I am blessed by God. How do I go and bless others, right? And so the way I used to teach this to like youth in like the church I was working at once upon a time, I would always say, okay, it's great to talk about how like I prayed for something and God made something happen, right? And teenagers, they're still stuck in that whole like God as the magic eight ball kind of thing half the time, because teenagers don't know anything, right? So it's just force of habit. I won't condemn a kid for thinking incorrectly about that, because that's how most people think. And as a teenager, you don't understand the nuances of life yet, so whatever. But something I tried to teach a lot of the youth in the church would be like, okay, you can think like we can tell stories about how God has blessed us, but then we can also like what makes a God story a God story is not it's not about you. It's about the blessing. So yes, we can tell stories about how God has blessed us, but what about the stories where God uses you to be a blessing, right? And that was something I would try and tell a lot of the youth in my church is like, how does God use you to be a blessing? And so, this is, I know I'm using like religious language, but that's something that we should always be mindful of as, we move into the next year, right? Because, 2021 may not be the best, but think of it this way. If you want 2022 to be better, you have to be an active reason why it's better, right? Because how's the old saying go, right? The definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over and expect different results. So when people sit on their hands and think, just going on the life the way that they did before, right? Oh, the next year will be better. No, it won't, unless you actively make it better. And yeah, you can, a good way of doing that is self-improvement, obviously, right? That goes without saying. But what I challenge you to do is not just to do that, but to go a step beyond that and use how you improve yourself to make other people's lives better, right? Even if it's just like it doesn't have to be a lot of people. I don't expect you to like change the world, right? Even if it's the life of one other person, right? I mean, that's how I spent a lot of my ministry time when I used to volunteer in the Vancouver slums, the downtown east side. That's kind of the approach I had, right? It's like, okay, even if it's like one or two people, how am I a blessing to someone else? Excuse me, how am I a blessing to someone else's life? And that's something we should always be mindful of. And so my challenge to you as we approach 2022 is, when you evaluate your life and where you are at now, how can I improve myself and use my self improvements to make other people's lives better? How to, mentor others or whatever, teach, you know, like it. Okay, I'll use myself. My thinking. So yeah, I'm using like my thinking into this. Like for you, you'll have to assess this yourself, right? But for me, it's like, okay, I want to be able to pass wisdom on to younger people, and that's why I hang around in like discourse or like all these guys are like 20 years old and even younger, right? Other day, I'm just talking to this one guy. He's like 13, and he was talking about like working, but then of course he's referring to like doing chores around the house. My definition of work is clearly very different. But like, in moments like that, it's like, well, how do I impart wisdom to someone like that, right? And how to live better? Because something that we've kind of lost in our culture is to like look upon the older and trust their instruction, right? Because the older have already been through the same crap you've done. Sure, it's different form, right? Because iPhones didn't exist back in the 60s, but you get the idea, right? They've gone through like certain peer pressures. They've gone through economic crises in the past, right? It's not like the current economic crisis is only something to us now, right? It obviously happened in the past, and so we should learn from the past. And I try to now it makes it sound like I'm like some old wizard guru, but like in all seriousness, is like, okay, I go out of my way to like, okay, help people be more knowledgeable about stuff in general. And then of course, like, okay, how do I help people be better? How to talk to people better, how to improve. um, you know when how do I improve people's mentality when they have to make tough decisions themselves, right? And so that's something I'm always mindful of. And I hope to continue doing that in 2022 and moving forward, that doing that more, right? And helping people go up the next level in that kind of development as they themselves get older, right? Because you're dealing with like, when I'm dealing with like 18, 19 year olds, it's like, okay, well, you're still a teenager at the age of 19, right? But like, you're gonna get to my age, and you better have a lot of stuff straightened out, right? Because you know I'm like the exception to the rule, right? So I always make this critique of like a lot of, it's actually kind of disgusting to see at times too. And it was kind of like a big source of like pain in my life as well, um, for a totally different reason. I told this story before, but I'll kind of tell it again, right? Where like for a long time, it was pretty rough that I was single, because I was, under that whole impression of like, well, I should probably date another Christian like myself, kind of thing. And that was kind of really hard to do when like a lot of churches that I went to did not have anyone my age. There's like this weird like gap, right, of like age groups of people in church, because it's really just like, okay, you have like these parents, and I kind of gave it away of what the other group is, right? You got these parents that are like in their 40s, early 50s, and then their kids who are like, well, the 20-year-olds, right? Well, coming out to be 20 or whatever, right? You got these like late 40s, 50-year-old, people, and then you have like people in their 20s. And then here I was, and this happened for like a number of years, where it's like, okay, well, I was in my, I started noticing this when I was like in my late 20s. And I noticed I didn't have any peers. I didn't have anyone that was my age in church to really like talk to, hang out with. Because the fact of the matter is, a lot of them just stopped going to church. And that was actually pretty sad to see, right? And of course, I told you the irony story that I went through growing up, right? Because my parents did the opposite of the typical um, Christian family upbringing, which of course the irony a lot of Christian family upbringing is that a lot of kids rebel, and then they stop going to church, and then they denounce the faith altogether, right? And unfortunately, I've seen this quite a bit. Or you run into the other problem, which I also saw in like my late 20s as well, where like, and this is a hot take. This is a hot take. I mean, here's your hot take on a stream. Last one of 2021. I've already said this one in the past though, so it's not like a new hot take. But when like a lot of postmodernism and I'm going to use that as like an umbrella term because there's a bunch of different aspects of that that poisons Christianity and churches in general. You know, it has poisoned it pretty badly, especially in like North America. And I knew a lot, and I even tried to date some of these girls, and then, I look on hindsight, I'm like, oh, thank God I dodged a bullet on that one. But like, but for a long time, it'd be like a lot of these women that I knew that were about my age, they adopted a lot more of these like postmodern ideas, and then passing them off as Christian. And there's actually a lot of that. I see it a lot on my Facebook too, where like someone posts this idea and they're trying to sound very Christian. But then you actually read in between the lines, and then you find there's actually all kinds of problems with it. And you're like, hold up. I see where you want to go, and you want to go to the right place, but you're gonna step over a lot of people's dead bodies to get there, right? And that is not a good way to go. And so a lot of that kind of thing happens in a lot of people my age. And I think one of the things that I'm hopeful for, and I see this even in like non-Christian young people, and I'm kind of hopeful. It's like, well, actually, you'll be easier to talk to Jesus about, and it's kind of ironic that it turns out that way. But like, a lot of young people are seeing my age group, my generation, if you will. Sorry, Raul, I don't know if you're part of the problem or anything, because I know you and I are the same age, but like, I see a lot of young people look at my age group, and they see how pretty messed up, right? And how all this stuff has like gone down the shitter for our age group. Dating culture down the shitter. Economic, like financial stability down the shitter. What else is down the shitter for my age group? Like general knowledge on what people should know after going to school down the shitter, right? The list probably goes way longer than this, but that's just a few good examples, right? And so I see a lot of young people, and they look at my age group and they go, okay, right? How do we not run into these problems? And that actually makes me hopeful, because it's like, well, there are ways to go through life without doing the idiotic things my age group does, right? I think because a lot of young adults see the fallout. I don't consider myself a young adult anymore, because I'm, clearly not. With my mega boomer takes, right? But like, and my mega boomer like games of choice, but it makes me hopeful, right? And that's another reason, going back to where I started from, is like, okay, to impart wisdom and to continue being a blessing in other people's lives as I move into 2022, and something I challenge all of you to do as well, is to find those things that you can do to use your life and your life experiences to bring betterment to other people's lives, right? Because if we don't start fixing this now, and being better people today, it's not, that it's the same as like the drunk dad, paradigm, right? I can quit anytime, the drunk dad paradigm is the whole, well, why don't you stop drinking? Well, I can quit anytime I want. They say, well, why don't you do it today? Well, I can always do it tomorrow, and then you never do it, right? That's the drunk dad paradigm. TLDR. So what I'm getting at, though, is if you want 2022 to be a better year, you have to go out and make yourself available to make it a better year. And so be the active agent, because I hate to break it to you, no one's going to do it for you, right? No one's going to make the year better. It's not going to things aren't going to magically fall into your lap, right? And so that's just something that I challenge all of you to, really think about as we finish this year and move on to the next one, right? Is to just think about how we can be better people, not just for ourselves, but for others as well, and to live, helping others and being a light, because there's a lot of people are in a lot of dark places. So maybe you need to be the light in someone else's life, right? So it's 5:15. I'll probably just do some closing preamble. Just I'm speaking of 2021 being pretty good. Like, I know this channel is still like super small. I don't have a huge audience. I mean, I have a very weird niche. I mean, it's one of those things that, like, confession time, I guess I should say. So it makes me like, I remember a guy told me, a buddy of mine, we were talking, and he told me the reason why I struggled in like my ministry life, for example, because this was at a time I was pretty at a low point in my life at this time, and I was struggling to find like pastoral work. And he told me, well, in his mind, he says, well, maybe the church, the ministry world isn't ready for you. And the reason is not because there's something wrong with you, but because most of the world, not just the ministry world, but like people like me, he's like, someone like you shouldn't exist. And the reason, what he meant by that was, okay, so I'm this young guy in my 30s. Well, back then I was like I was 30 at the time. This was a couple of years ago. So I was 30 at the time. He's like, well, someone like you, he's 30, who maintains a lot of conservative Christian values in a world of where Christianity has been poisoned by a lot of postmodernity. And here's someone, who's more conservative and a lot more rigorous in his Bible thinking, which is already a weird thing in itself, especially in a young person, right? So there's that. And then, of course, at the same time, you're also a person who understands the culture, and you're a person who's, been able to enter culture without tainting yourself. And then he was explaining to me that, like, that's a bizarre thing. Like, you don't see that very often in your life, if some people may never see it at all in their life. So I'm like, I'm what? Like, I'm a freaking unicorn, I guess. I guess I'm a unicorn. But, like, so he was explaining to me that, like, yeah, and it's a, something like you is so bizarre to a lot of people, especially to, like, okay, let's say, like, in a lot of churches, you have these old pastors, and they're used to the status quo. But the problem is, and I've voiced my opinion on this, where it's like, that's not going to work anymore, guys, right? Things are be a changing. And so what my buddy was getting at was, well, one day, the whole thing, the whole church system's going to turn over, and then people are going to be, well, what do we do? And that's where someone like me would come in and be like, okay, there's a new world, and we got to do it in a new way, right? And approach the gospel and preach the gospel, and not change without changing the message, but doing it in a new way. And that was an interesting thing, and I still think about it 3 years later or whatever, and here I am still without like a church. But in my channel description, I'm a parish-less parson, right? And of course, for those of you who probably go, what the hell did any of those words mean? Well, parish is just a medieval term for like a church community, and a parson is a general term for like a church worker. So the pastor is a parson, the worship team are parsons, the church janitor is a parson, right? And of course, I took the inspiration from the Canterbury Tales. I really need to buy a new copy of that book, because I can't find mine for some reason. I think I lost it somewhere. That would be really sad, because I love that book. I feel like I want to read that book on channel, but that, once again, I would have to do that as like a video and not as a stream. But the Canterbury Tales is pretty great. But anyway, the Parson character, in the Canterbury Tales, he's like he's got like the shittiest job, right? He's basically the guy who preps graves, so he digs holes to put people's bodies in. That's what he does. It's terrible when you think, once you understand that's what he does, you feel bad for the guy, right? But then of course, the author Chaucer, um, he describes like the parson as being like the only real upright Christian among like the other like clergy people, because some of them are pretty awful. Like the summoner is like supposedly like a Christian judge, but he's like a piece of shit of a human being, right? And so the parson is like this one guy who's like he's the good guy, right? He's the guy who he understands his Bible and he lives it, right? And not to stroke my own ego too much, but like basically I like to see, and that's the existence of that's the reason why this channel exists, right? Is that like, maybe some guy who works some dead end job in normal life, but then like, I want to do what's right here, and that's why I do like what I do, right? And have a community and try and pass wisdom on to you, and of course Bible reading streams is a dead giveaway, right? Of bringing betterment to hopefully I like to believe I'm bringing betterment to your lives in some degree or another. But anyway, that's just some reflection on like this past year, right? Because I've played a couple of games, taught the philosophy of those games, and also just had a grand old time of watching me be a dancing monkey and things like that. And I like to think that hopefully you guys are benefiting from the content I put on here, and a nice 2021 rewind binge. You can watch like some of I have a bunch of playlists for all my stuff, right? Shameless advertising now, right? So I got a bunch of playlists for all my older playthroughs, right? And of course my older Bible reading streams where I put all the when I did like a particular Bible book, I put them all in like a playlist. So definitely check those out if you want to get caught up to speed when we do the book of Luke, right? Because honestly, the book of Exodus is like, you got to read it before you understand any of the Gospels, right? So, but like, anyway, I'm rambling now because I really don't have much else to say. But, 2021 was good enough, right? We managed to get through this channel and do stuff on here and leave that imprint, and hopefully I pass wisdom on to you in some form or another. And so hopefully in 2022, that continues on, and hopefully do it better, right? That's always the hope, right? And so yeah, that's basically all I have to really say about that. I, for the most part, enjoyed 2021 overall because, sure there is some big downsides, but there's some huge upsides too, right? And so don't allow yourself to be jaded to like, don't just think that, another year goes by and then nothing happens, right? But, every day you have the chance to make something happen, right? So go out. I mean, I know there's a whole pandemic thing still going on, but, go out there and be the difference you want to see, right? Because it starts with you. Anyway, just some housekeeping before we end the stream, because I'm going to end it in a couple minutes. But basically, Wednesday, 3 o'clock, we're playing a game on here. Don't know what I'm playing yet. Just going to be dicking around, fooling around, play something silly. But we're just going to play and just kind of hang out as we come to the year end, as we approach Christmas as well. So we're just going to, fool around in some game and not be too serious, have a grand old time, hang out. And then Thursday, we'll have our Throwback Thursday video of Heroes of Might Magic 2. I should probably get around to filming it. Probably film it tonight, actually. I'm not going to wait till Wednesday. sounds like a terrible idea. I'm probably gonna do it right after the stream, actually. So, Heroes Might Magic 2 on Thursday. And then Friday, we will have our last stream of the year. I'm going to do an Advent service on stream at 4 o'clock Pacific time on Friday. So it's like a super early Advent service. Which I know sounds kind of weird, because normally people like to keep it like a nighttime thing, because of course you can do all the cool candlelight stuff. But I can't do that here, because like there's too much paper and stuff around here. I don't want my house to catch on fire. But we'll figure something, right, for, doing our candlelight, Christmas Eve service. So that will be at Friday at 4 o'clock. So I know the time thing's gonna be a little confusing, right? So Wednesday, when we do our game stream, that'll be at 3 o'clock Pacific time. But Friday's candlelight service, quote unquote, will be at 4 o'clock Pacific time, and that's how we're gonna end streams for the year. So I hope you guys will, come and hang out for those, and enjoy our Christmas season together as we approach Christmas in like less than 5 days now. I mean, we're like pretty late on Monday, so I'm gonna say it's like less than 5 days. So. But yeah, it's Christmas time pretty soon. Gotta go watch Die Hard, to fit my next Christmas movie, right? So, anyway, with that said, though, this is gonna be the end of the stream. Hope you guys enjoyed hanging out with me and just going over the year and talk a little bit of Christmas philosophy and stuff like that. But anyway, this is gonna be the end of the stream. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys Wednesday for the game stream at 3 o'clock. You guys have a great rest of your day and continue enjoying this Christmas season. God bless you.